You can't ignore who this person is. To stack up the coincidences, one of 35 people has got a hole in their head. The hole is dead center in the top of their head, and it just happens to be the most important person on the plane from a political point of view. That's a whole lot of reason to investigate it, unquote. In late 1993, the White House Office of Personal Security, headed by Craig Livingstone, illegally obtained from the FBI the confidential background files on more than 900 Bush administration officials and other perceived enemies of President Clinton. At the request of Hillary Clinton, the files were to be uploaded onto White House computers so that sensitive information could be shared with the Democratic National Committee. These files contain all allegations, rumors, or statements made about the individual during FBI background checks, whether or not confirmed, true, or even credible. Livingstone had a history of prior drug use, which should have disqualified him from serving in the White House. However, senior White House counsel William Kennedy III said that Livingstone was hired on orders from the First Lady. Other evidence indicates that this illegal activity was likely approved by President Clinton. Congressman Bob Barr comments on this frightening scenario.
Chuck Colson, who is now a born-again Christian and a prominent speaker on prison reform and religion in America, went to federal prison, went to jail because he misused a single government law enforcement file. Yet we now know that the Clinton administration misused perhaps upwards of 1,000 or more FBI files, which include and contain very sensitive information on average American citizens. I think clearly what the Clinton administration is trying to do is an orchestrated, systematic effort to thwart justice, to thwart the rule of law, to thwart legitimate investigations by the Congress, whether it's impeachment proceedings or regular oversight. They're clearly designed, as they are, with going after Kenneth Starr, the independent counsel, and other independent counsels, trying to derail investigations. They're trying to derail prosecutions. It is very well orchestrated, and I'm sorry to say, in some degree, it is succeeding. But these are not isolated incidents that we're seeing with the compilation of enemies lists, enemies files, FBI files. It is systematic, it is abusive, I believe it is illegal, and it is very frightening because this is precisely the sort of stuff, except on a much larger scale, that forced President Nixon from office a generation ago.
Who was the biggest contributor to the Clinton-Gore ticket in 1992? Not a corporation, not a labor union, not a Hollywood mogul, but Indonesian businessman James Riyadi, who gave $450,000 to elect Bill Clinton. The Riyadis and their executives gave an additional $600,000 to the Democratic National Committee and Democratic state parties. The Riyadis' corporate flagship is the Lippo Group, a multi-billion-dollar financial conglomerate with business ties to China's communist government. The patriarch of the business empire, Mokhtar Riyadi, and all three of his sons have fled the country. In 1977, Mokhtar Riyadi became partners in one of America's largest investment banks, Stevens Incorporated in Little Rock, Arkansas. His son, James Riyadi, interned there and soon began a friendship with Arkansas Attorney General Bill Clinton. Thus began a friendship that has lasted 20 years and has spread a web of intrigue, financial corruption, and foreign influence into American government. In return for their generosity, the Riyadis and their friends were given unparalleled access to the White House. On the afternoon of April 19, 1993, 80 members of the Branch Davidian religious cult were holed up in their compound outside Waco, Texas. On that same day, James Riyadi, John Huang, and other Chinese officials were visiting President Clinton in the Oval Office. The television in the corner showed CNN's live coverage of the burning compound as 17 American children were dying in a burning inferno. But the president took time out to give his visitors a tour of the White House. In their book, Year of the Rat, Edward Timberlake and William Triplett have connected the dots between the Clinton White House and the Communist Chinese. Some examples are as follows. The Riady family, with connections to Communist China's KGB, became the largest contributor to the Clinton-Gore campaign in 1992. Communist agents and representatives of Chinese organized crime were granted extraordinary access to the White House. They had targeted Bill Clinton 15 years earlier when he was an obscure politician in Arkansas. America's defense and foreign policy have been twisted to benefit Clinton and Gore foreign backers, including the Chinese military. Nearly 100 witnesses have either fled the country or taken the Fifth Amendment. William C. Triplett II is the former chief counsel to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He has 30 years of experience working on China and national security. We asked him about the Riady family.
They tried to come into the United States in the late 70s in Georgia. That didn't work out. Ultimately, they ended up in Little Rock. And in Little Rock, in the late 70s, the heir apparent to the family fortune met Mr. Clinton when he was then Attorney General of Arkansas, and there have been perhaps 20 years worth of friendship from thence. Their man in the United States was a man named John Huang, who was also ethnic Chinese from Taiwan, and he joined them overseas. And he looked after their business interests here and also their campaign contributions. He was in charge of writing the checks and making sure that it happened. In 1992, Mr. Clinton, in the spring, was in trouble. It had been discovered that he was a draft dodger. The Jennifer Flowers business had come out, and he was out of money for the New York primary. What happened then was that the Riady family has a bank in Arkansas that they could influence, and the bank gave loaned $3.5 million to the Clinton campaign, and that was enough to get him the nomination. So I think one could say that they were instrumental in getting him the nomination and the election in 1992.
It's really quite outrageous for a dollar that an American citizen provides to a candidate or a party of their choice being neutralized by a dollar coming in a million times over from a foreign source, not just a foreign source, but a foreign adversarial source, namely Communist China.
The Riady family is not a public charity. They wanted something for their money. So after Bill Clinton got elected, they sent a letter to Bruce Lindsay, who was in charge of personnel in the Clinton administration, saying that they had invested in Mr. Clinton. What they wanted was for their man, John Huang, to be moved into the American government, and they succeeded. In January 1994, Huang, who had been the area manager for Riady's bank in Little Rock, received a top-secret security clearance for his new job at the Commerce Department. According to phone records, Huang made over 400 calls to various parts of the Riady and Lippo Empire. 170 calls were to Hong Kong, Indonesia, and Red China. CIA agents have testified that they gave Huang 37 classified one-on-one briefings in his office at Commerce. They estimate that he could have seen as many as 550 pieces of American intelligence. Huang later went to work for the Democratic National Committee, where he would have normally lost his security clearance. But much pressure was put on Assistant Commerce Secretary Charles Meissner